the World Economic Forum Africa will be back on African soil in the coming week. This time the theme is Rethinking Africa's Growth Strategy. It's going to be held in Tanzania. Joining us now on what the issues are going to be is Kuseni Dlamini, CEO Old Mutual South Africa and also the emerging markets, and he's also the co-chair of the World Economic Forum to be taking place in Tanzania. I think that's for me is the important bit, is it's taking place outside of South Africa for the first time.
Not quite for the first time outside of South Africa, but indeed for the first time in East Africa.
Okay.
And that's a first.
Okay, so is Tanzania up and ready to go? Systems all ready to go?
It seems like it's all systems go. There's been an enthusiastic participation by all the key stakeholders in Tanzania. We're all looking forward to it. It should be great. And there's been an overwhelming response from different participants from different parts of the world.
Okay, just talk to us about the mood, because it seems as though right now there's a sense of optimism. It's post the credit crisis. We know that Africa didn't suffer negative growth, but certainly slowed growth. But the IMF last week came out with an outlook that said Africa should be growing at about 4.5%.
There is a new sense of hope and energy within Africa that now that the world seems to be emerging from the global economic crisis, Africa has got to use this as an opportunity to really reposition itself and reinvent itself to be able to benefit from the upturn in a sustainable way going forward.
Mm-hmm. Now, the World Economic Forum, Davos and G20 summits and other fora have really spent a lot of time discussing governance reforms within the global financial system. To what extent is that going to be an issue at World Economic Forum Africa's chapter?
It certainly will be an issue because we are not yet out of the woods. It will also be an issue because Africa has got a voice in those discussions. In the G20, we know that South Africa is the African voice there, is the voice of the developing world at large, and Africa cannot really be on the margins of the debate. Africa has got to play a very active role in shaping the debate. Okay,
now at World Economic Forum 2009, a huge issue was infrastructure. In fact, it kept on being a recurring theme in all the seminars that we attended. And the feeling is that poor infrastructure is driving up the cost of doing business in Africa by 40%. And it is a critical component of getting the continent up and moving and competitive. How are you going to bring that onto the agenda?
It's going to be a very big issue on the agenda. And we look at infrastructure from a holistic perspective, both in physical and social terms. In terms of the physical infrastructure, we need to make sure that Africa has got good roads, it's got good airports, good railway lines and good ports to enable Africa to trade itself out of poverty. On the social side of the infrastructure debate is the knowledge deficit, the human capital deficit that we have in Africa. Unless we resolve it, there is no way in which Africa can be a globally competitive continent. And the World Economic Forum will be looking at ways and means of making sure that we make a step change in terms of addressing Africa's infrastructure deficits.
Okay, and the synergies of regional bodies. I know that last week we were celebrating the centenary of SACU, and COMERSA has consolidated on a variety of levels, but they all seem to be working separately as opposed to in cohesion and harmony.
That's a missed opportunity because Africa, as a result of that, trades more with the outside world than with itself. There's a huge untapped opportunity in terms of intra-African trade. We need to look at the institutions that we have within Africa. How do we make them effective? How do we make them efficient in a way that promotes intra-African trade to enable Africa to trade itself out of poverty?
I mean, those who focus on African trade will tell you that trade finance is a very important issue. And we know that the Development Bank, the African Development Bank, has acquired substantial financing, and so has the Nigerian Central Bank, for supporting trade finance within the ambit of their work. But we don't seem to be getting a lot of private sector capital injection in terms of facilitating cross-border initiatives. And yet we keep on talking about PPPs, public-private partnerships.
Yeah, I think we need to reinvent our approach to PPPs. We really need to try and put more substance rather than just rhetoric. And the challenge going forward is really to look at creative ways of making sure that we have private partnerships that work, private partnerships that respond to the real and concrete challenges facing Africa, such as the issue of trade, for example. That's a huge opportunity for the financial services sector, for domestic resources to be mobilized in order to underpin intra-regional trade within the African continent.
All right, an issue that was also dominant in 2009 was that of food security, and we know that Kofi Annan, through his Green Revolutionary Movement, has really been galvanizing the question of better agricultural output, more stable jobs in farming economies, and Africa to really stop being a net importer of food and an exporter, because we've got vast tracts of land. Now, with that also are ecological issues. I know that you were at Copenhagen as well, and you followed that issue very, very strongly. How much of a factor is that going to play at WEF 2010?
It's a very big issue, Lerato. The food security, water security, and energy security nexus is a very, very important one, and it's got to be looked at from a strategic point of view, because all those aspects are very much interconnected. And in Tanzania, we'll really be looking at discussing those issues with fresh ideas, getting some fresh expert opinions and inputs, and hopefully coming out with some new blueprints that can enable us to make real progress on these issues.
All right, World Economic Forum Africa 2010, are you following that conference at all? It's an opportunity for business leaders and political leaders to talk within one forum.
Yeah, I think it's very important to follow it, and I think that, and I mean, they've gone to great lengths to try and get public input into that. Like, for instance, on YouTube, you can go and actually post some of your comments and also post some questions that could potentially be put forward to the board as potential, as potential issues. I think this is really important for Africa, and I think it's important for Africa to collectively understand their position within the globe and understand what the issues are at play. And this is an opportunity for them to understand these issues better and to potentially get expert input, as Kuseni said just now.
Okay, just a final comment from you. In less than 8 weeks, South Africa will be hosting the World Cup. I know in Davos, a huge contingent of South African businessmen traveled with President Zuma to really lead the clarion call for global support for the FIFA World Cup tournament. Are you going to use this platform to do the same?
Absolutely. 2010 is going to be center stage in Tanzania, and we'll be using that opportunity as well to build up to the start of the World Cup in June.
And
really to tell the world that we are ready. There is a sense of African unity, and there's a sense that the continent is also sharing in the 2010 FIFA World Cup glory that South Africa is enjoying.